Guernsey.
Oh yes, that's me with you until 1 o'clock today. Now, Britain is dealing with more bed bugs as a result of this summer's hot weather. Experts are telling us the problem is worse in densely populated cities. It seems that warmer temperatures shorten the bed bug breeding cycle, and the bugs are increasingly carried by us all from places like cinemas, offices and public transport into our homes. Meet David Cain, my next guest. David is Managing Director of Bed Bugs Limited. They specialise in extermination, and he tells us he's been an expert on bed bugs for about 15 years, which he says it makes him the longest serving bed bug expert. He's also been bugging us to come on the show. David, welcome.
Good morning, how are you?
Yeah, I'm a bit scratchy this morning, I've got to be honest.
Understandable, it's not a pleasant subject to talk about, but that's why we need to talk about it.
Oh, well, I think I really ought to make a confession, David, before this conversation goes any further. I am the guy that got scabies a few weeks ago, and my doctor said, have you been in a lot of different accommodation lately? And I worked it out. It was 6 hotel rooms in 18 days.
Yep, or it could have been someone that you randomly shook hands with.
Could it have been as simple as that?
As simple as that. It's one of those crazy things. I meet an awful lot of people in my work, and I've got into the habit of always having a quick look at their hand before I shake it.
No. Well, what do you say then? What do you say? Let's have a look at your hand. Have you washed it lately?
No. It's really obvious. You always get those telltale, like red spots around the fingers and the webbing.
Really?
And yeah, it's one of those, if your eyesight's good enough, you can spot scabies before you come into contact. A lot like bed bugs. If you're aware of a problem and you're looking out for it, you can actually avoid it in the first place.
Well, you see, there's me thinking now you're going around with rubber gloves on all the time.
No, not at all. I'm just very conscious of the world around me. Strangely enough, not that many people in my world shake hands as a first meeting, and those that the hand is kind of coming towards you, so you've got a couple of seconds to look at it and decide, is that the hand you want to shake today? And if it's covered in red spots, just politely decline.
Well, that's not a very nice way to start a meeting, is it?
No, but neither is picking up scabies.
Yeah, would you say to that person, I'm not going to shake your hand because I think you might have scabies?
I would say, I'm terribly sorry, you've got the classic signs of a little bit of a problem and you need to go and see your GP.
Right, okay. Now, this is obviously a very serious subject. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What are these bed bugs and mites, and where do they come from?
Well, they've been a pest of man since we lived in caves, and very, very adapted to live alongside human beings up until about the 1930s and 40s, when we suddenly invented all of these chemicals that they hadn't adapted to. Everyone then got treated and the problem appeared to disappear, but in fact it got pushed back into little quiet corners of society and other parts of the world. And over the last 15, 20 years, the problem has been making a steady increase back in society. And it's not just Britain. We're having the problem all across Europe. In fact, anywhere that people travel or people live, bedbug problems are cropping up. So It's kind of an old problem that's come back because we no longer keep an eye on it.
Ah, right. Now, how can we prevent contact then? Because you're saying that we can pick up horrible little things, little mites, literally, just by the shake of a hand or sitting on a bus seat or something like that?
Well, with scabies, it's skin-to-skin contact.
Right.
Bed bugs are a little bit different. They're much larger. Mm-hmm. So to start off with, you're talking about something that ranges in size from 2 millimeters to, when it's fully fed as an adult, about 15 millimeters. So they're really easy to spot. So the most important thing with bed bugs is when you're traveling, particularly staying away from home, spend a couple of minutes to look at the bed before you actually sleep in it. Because way, you're looking for the live samples, their cast-off skins, and their fecal traces, which are little black dots. I'm
not liking the sound of this, David, I've got to be honest.
It's a little unpleasant, but if you think about it this way, you're about to sleep in that bed.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you have a good look at it first?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so if we see something we don't...
If there's a problem, then you've not come into full contact with it, and you can change rooms or sleep somewhere else that night, and you'll avoid contact with them in the first place.
How do they get there, though?
Well, from people. And part of the problem is that about 60% of people don't initially respond to bed bugs. So you can have a problem, be completely oblivious to the fact, and therefore, like typhoid Mary, you're spreading the problem around society.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the second step of getting the problem under control. It's actually taking the personal responsibility to look at your bed. So once a month, you strip your bed down, you give it a really good clean with a vacuum cleaner. At the same time, you're either checking your passive monitor, which is at the head end of the bed, or you're looking for live samples, cast skins, fecal traces. And if you get into the habit of doing that once a month, the problem will never be so large that it is massively disruptive to your life.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong then. So these bugs, or whatever they are in our beds, they bite us because they find our skin, our blood, or whatever it is, attractive. Is there anything we can do to make ourselves unattractive to these little things?
Lots of people have tried it over the years, but nothing has been proven to work. Bedbugs feed on human blood, so they kind of crawl out of their hiding places, find you, stick a little needle into you, withdraw some blood, and then go back into hiding as fast as possible. So there's nothing that we can do to deter them from their favourite source of food.
So we've just got a prevention then, is the message here.
Exactly. Prevention, early detection, avoidance wherever we can, and people need to also understand that this isn't because of dirt or poor hygiene. This is because you've travelled, accidentally come into contact with a problem that's becoming a lot more common, and inadvertently brought it back to your own home.
Okay, so if we find then that despite all of the precautions we're taking and we spot a little mite here and there, and then we see a few more, let's continue talking about the mattress. Is it a case of getting rid of that mattress then?
Oh, absolutely not. There's a lot of confusion in the world between dust mites and bed bugs. Dust mites live inside the mattress, and therefore you've got a problem that may require the replacement of the mattress. Bed bugs tend to live, they live on the outside and in the cracks and crevices within the bed, and therefore throwing out the mattress isn't going to resolve the problem. You need to effectively eradicate the bugs that are present and stop the introduction of further ones. So if it's a light problem and you're only seeing one or two, let's say once a month or so, then keeping on top of it with cleaning will keep the problem under control. If you're finding much more significant problems, or one of your listeners goes home tonight, lifts up the mattress, and there are a couple of thousand insects looking back at them, don't panic, don't throw anything away, but you're going to need someone with experience to help fix that problem, because it's the first time you're trying to tackle it. It doesn't always work in the way that people naturally assume, like, throw more chemical at it, that's going to solve the problem. If they're resistant to the chemicals you're using, it's only going to make the matter worse. So it's one of those, if it's your first encounter, you don't have the experience and skills to tackle it, so you need some help. But the smaller the problem it is, the more likely you are to be able to fix it yourself with the right knowledge and understanding.
What about preventing these little mites from getting there in the first place? Because clearly we've picked them up from somewhere. That somewhere could be on the bus, perhaps. It could be in your office. Or am I wide of the mark here?
No, you're absolutely spot on. And this is the kind of awful aspect of the problem. In order to stop those bed bugs being in those locations, we need to communicate with everyone. So we need to actually, as a society, say, hey guys, this is a problem. It may not be affecting you today, but if you don't stop and think about it and communicate with those around you, at some stage someone's going to inadvertently bring it in. So we all have to have that shared responsibility of looking after our own space so that the problem doesn't spread on to other people. And that's why it's not as complex as just don't go to the cinema, don't sit down, don't do this, because another avenue will eventually open up. I've met people who picked this up from library books.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But people love to read books in bed. And
Oh, yeah.
with that individual, the solution was to get them an e-book reader.
After you got rid of the bugs.
Yeah, get rid of the bugs,
Yeah.
and then stop you getting the bugs by, instead of going to the library and spending hours leafing through the books,
Yeah.
get yourself an e-book reader, and then just pick your genre and titles, and you're no longer coming into contact with the place that you were getting bugs from. Now, the library only had bed bugs because someone else who loved the same form of literature, the same series of books, was reading them in bed, inadvertently putting bed bugs into those books, and then depositing them back in the library system.
Well, don't even give it a thought, do you, really, on a daily routine basis?
No, and it's people don't do it deliberately and maliciously. It's an accident that happens because they're not aware of the impact. And that's why it's about reaching out and communicating, which itself is one of the hardest things to do with a subject that causes everyone to itch and panic.
Yeah. And has the weather had any impact on these bugs? Are there more around because it's been so hot?
Well, part of the problem is that the insects, their life cycle is very much dictated by temperature. So the 3-week heat wave that we had reduced the egg hatching time of the insects down from kind of 14 days plus all of the way down to about 7 or 8 days. So all of a sudden they were hatching faster, there were more of them present, more of them potentially to be introduced into public spaces, and that's why we all took the decision and said, hey, this is a bit of a perfect storm that's happened. If we don't encourage people to talk about it now, if we try and do this in 6 months' time, it's going to be a much, much bigger problem.
Well, I appreciate your time this morning, Dave. Fascinating stuff there. Don't take this the wrong way, and I've never asked a guest this question, but where are you sleeping tonight?
I'm sleeping in my bed, which doesn't have bed bugs because I work in a high occupational risk area. So rather than doing it once a month, I check my bed once a week.
Have you ever found anything?
Yes. Many, many years ago, one of my partners wasn't prepared to follow my advice about not sitting down on public transport. The location she was travelling on we knew was a problem because of other customers of ours. And the second time I found bed bugs, I decided it was probably easier to change the relationship than to keep eradicating them from my own home.
Wow, so bugs ended your relationship?
Well, it was one of the contributing factors. It wasn't the only one.
David, I'm not going to go off at a tangent, but you obviously take this very, very seriously. And, at least you've brought it to our attention this morning, and a subject which I don't think is a common subject, say, down at the pub, but it might well be tonight.
Absolutely, and hopefully, together, we will have prevented some problems for people as well.
All right, David, thanks for your time this morning.
No worries.
Cheers. David Cain there is MD of Bed Bugs Limited there. So are you feeling a bit itchy after that?